So basically, if you get into a situation of agreeing to balance the budget, and you're going to take out the income flow and the spending flow, and on top of that, the incentive factors are not to spend, and on the tax side is to flee the country. So trying to get, and by the way, they're trying to sell this thing, so they got to come up with a name. Economists called it austerity, and the IMF, who, like, for example, with Greece, saying the terms of my loan to you is you balance the budget. And Greece, by the way, that's what they tried to do in Greece. Guess what happened? They tried to balance the budget. They raised taxes. GDP fell like about 4 or 5%, and the deficit rose. So you're going backwards by trying to balance the budget, given these elasticities. As a matter of fact, there was a wonderful piece by, in fact, I have it here, by Goldman Sachs this week, and their estimate is that for every 1% of balanced budget achievement, and remember, we got 10% to go. The deficit's 10%, and it'll probably get larger as the entitlements go. They said for every 1% of trying to reduce the deficit, you crush growth by 0.6 of a percentage point. So if we did all 10 percentage points in 1 year, GDP would fall by 6%, which means the worst recession we've had since the 30s was 2009, when we fell 4%. On top of that, what the point of basically economists are studying it. The name of the issue now is, quote, expansionary austerity. How could you possibly expand an economy when you're going through austerity? And all the focus now comes on the expansionary side. And there are things that can be done, and I doubt highly that they'll be sufficient, but basically you have to do every supply side problem out there. And some of them are, in my view, demolish houses, the supply of houses, write off consumer debt, recapitalize the banks, not with public money, but with private money, i.e. supply. The other thing is medical schools and medical, one of the big budget busters is the cost of Medicare, which is the cost of we don't have doctors in hospitals. I can't tell you how many undergraduates I've had the conversation with in the last 2 or 3 years. Be something to the effect that, Dr. Spellman, I was a pre-med, but I switched to business. And I said, well, why'd you switch to business? I think this is when we really need doctors. He said, well, my father's a doctor, and he wouldn't finance it. He told me don't you even think about becoming a doctor, given the haircuts they're taking on all the fees that they the government's imposing like a 30% haircut on their fees now, and it's getting worse and worse. And they're all dropping out. And we're not getting a regeneration of the doctors needed. So we have supply side things we could do of sorts. So there are other things that usually get done when you go into austerity. You lower interest rates. Well, we're at the bottom. You can't go any further. You have unemployment, so wages are supposed to be flexible downward, and you're supposed to make these people more employable, and that doesn't happen. And by the way, it hurts us, because when wages go down, then income goes down. Then you try to, in an open global economy, is lower the cost of your currency. Well, we just tried that with the Fed. One of the reasons the Fed ramped up money supply so much was they knew the money was going to go abroad, which would make the dollar cheaper. And guess what? Just a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, Switzerland intervened in the currency market and said, no, you're not going to make our currency more expensive and yours cheaper, because we're not going to sell any skis this winter. So they intervened, and they offset the Fed policy. So are you going to possibly pull out of the austerity with a cheaper currency, cheaper interest rates, cheaper wages? The answer is we're up against the wall on all of those. Wages could help, but we're already in a situation where we're losing the middle class. I mean, we're really going to a demographic that's that's bimodal. So austerity doesn't work. And on top of that, this Goldman Sachs report says 2 other things that were of interest. What they identified is the number of countries of the world that have to go through it. And here it is. And I'm sorry I didn't blow it up, but this is the size of the general government gross public debt that has to be reined into control. And this is Japan, Greece, Italy, Ireland, the US. We're not even #1 on this list. Portugal, France, Canada, the UK, Germany's not too bad, Spain, yes, Switzerland. By the way, they just accumulated a huge amount of debt because they bailed out their banking systems. So basically, the developed countries of the world that got weakened by the developing countries, and they all have large deficits. This is what debt to GDP ratio